Welcome back to Shire Travels. This is part 2 of our trip to the Flinders Ranges. Last time we travelled from Melbourne all the way up to Arkaroola and explored their amazing property. Now we start heading south and our first stop is Blinman. From Arkaroola it was about 2.5 hours to get to Blinman. Now we topped up on fuel before we left. It was around about $2.70 a litre, which these days isn't too crazy. Blinman is a small village, I guess you'd call it, just outside the Flinders Ranges National Park. It has a pub, mine tours, a cafe, a few houses, and that is about it. There aren't any services there, so there's no fuel, food, water, not really much at all. We had considered doing a mine tour in Blinman, but with the little one with us, it was all just going to be a bit too much. We had lunch at the Blinman cafe though, which was great. We'd highly recommend it. They also had some bakery goods there, so we grabbed ourselves some fresh bread. Then it was on to Moolooloo station. We drove along Glass Gorge Road and then onto Moolooloo Road. Glass Gorge Road is unsealed, but it wasn't actually too bad to drive on at all. It was a very scenic drive. We drove to the homestead and there wasn't anyone around there, which we thought was fine. We half expected it. Because it is a working sheep station, we thought there probably wouldn't be someone there to meet us. They left us instructions to head into their laundry area and find a clipboard that had our name on it. Within the clipboard, there was some welcome notes, and then there was also information on exactly how to find our campsite. Moolooloo has a few different campsites and they have a really good website which has a fly-through of each campsite so you can see exactly what it's like. You can also book camping online as well, which is really useful. Some of the campsites are very remote and you do have to be self-contained. However, there are a couple which have eco toilets or drop toilets. We decided to stay on Witch's Camp. This camp was fairly remote but still only about 15 minutes from the homestead. It also had a drop toilet as well, which was perfect as we weren't self-contained. To get there it meant going through a couple of gates and also crossing a dry riverbed. This was absolutely fine in the car and caravan, no problem at all. Moolooloo was around about $40 a night. They're dog friendly and kids are free. You're paying for the site and that includes the cost of 2 adults. Witch's Camp was a really nice spot. There were a few different places that we could have set ourselves up. Once we got set up, we then decided to drive to Sunset Boulevard. This is a couple of hills that are right next to the homestead. You pretty much just drive on top, there's a bench at the top and you can sit and watch the sunset over the ranges. It's a very, very nice spot. The next day we didn't do too much, we just relaxed, had a bit of an explore of our campsite and the riverbed around there, and then we decided to drive out to Glass Gorge Lookout. We drove out there to watch sunset and it was around about 30 minutes from our campsite. I had seen this spot on YouTube and I had assumed that because it was on YouTube it would potentially be ruined. Or not ruined, it would just be quite busy, and much to our surprise there was no one else there. We didn't actually see a single car drive by in the whole time that we were there. It was an incredible spot to sit and watch the sunset over the ranges. It is just the most amazing viewing spot. If you are in the area, and it's only about, I'd say 20 minutes from the Brachina Gorge free camp, it is definitely worth a trip out there. Now, while I said that we were the only ones there, every now and again we would spot something moving and think, what's that? Or what's that weird sound? It was goats. We had no idea just how bad the feral goat population was. In the Flinders, it is absolutely out of control. They are everywhere. Something to bear in mind if you are driving along Glass Gorge Road. Heaps of goats everywhere. When there's one, there's 10 following it, so just watch out when they run across the road. We stayed there for a while, watched the sunset. It was fantastic, and then we drove back to our station. Now, because the sun had set, it was getting dark, there were lots of kangaroos around, as well as the goats. So again, just something to keep in mind. Back at camp, we enjoyed just sitting outside and looking at the stars. It's similar to Arkaroola, there is not much light pollution there, and so the stars are just incredible. The next day we did a paid drive on the station, and this was out to Ferguson Gorge. This costs $45. What you do is you go to the homestead, sign in, get a key, and then pay as well. You can either pay by cash or they do actually have an FPOS machine there, which was very handy. It was maybe about a 30-minute drive out there, and then the walk from the car to the gorge was probably about another 30 minutes as well. It took us a little bit longer. I was a waddling pregnant lady, and then Tom had to carry our toddler because Typical toddler running laps around the car before the walk started. As soon as the walk starts, their legs just don't work. I don't know if anyone else finds that. So it had to be carried pretty much the whole way there and back. The walk itself wasn't too strenuous. There were a few bits which were up and downhill. We also did it in, I think it was late morning, middle of the day, which maybe wasn't the best idea. There's not much shade. There are a few trees around, but not much which cover the path. Just be aware, maybe going earlier in the morning or later in the afternoon when there's a bit more shadows from the hills, it might have been better. The gorge itself was really beautiful. I think it would have looked amazing after a heavy rain with the water cascading down the different levels of rocks. It was really good, definitely worth a visit. There were still a few pools of water there, which again, like at most places, were full of frogs. We spent a bit of time hanging out by the water and then we made the walk back. One thing to look out for on these walks is the little arrows that point to you where to go. Now it is very easy to miss one and get lost, so just make sure you're being extra vigilant. Don't do what we did and at one point follow what looks like a well-worn path. It might just be a goat track and take you in the wrong direction. Now, because we were completely off-grid, off-water at this campsite, we were being really careful with our water usage. And I think in the 3 nights we were there, we had a shower on the second night and then we were like, right, we'll see how we go for water. We were absolutely fine. I think the Jayco had a 120 litre water tank and then we had 2 jerrys for drinking water. We didn't even use half of that, so on the last night there we had nice long hot showers and bucket baths. We needn't have been so cautious. Now having a drop toilet was really handy there as well. The only thing was that there was a big huntsman that lived next to the toilet. I'm talking right next to the toilet bowl. And I try not to be too scared of creepy crawlies, but this was just a little bit too close for comfort. At one point, Tom did try and relocate it carefully with a broom, but it put up a hell of a fight and then it just scuttled back in when we tried to move it out. It's something to be expected in the wilderness, in the outback. In terms of power, again, we were fine. There was plenty of sun during the day to help bring the batteries back up to charge. Now we did also bring a solar blanket with us as the Crosstrak had an external plug-in. The solar blanket was our own that we bought with us that we had for the car anyway, so that was really useful to have. I think the little Crosstrak only had about 100 or 150 watts of solar on the roof. And so having our 250 watt blanket just gave it that little bit of extra juice. We only had the fridge that we were running off the battery and lights at night. Apart from that, we didn't really have much else, or we just powered it off the car. Before we left Moolooloo, we drove out to the Nucaleena mine ruins. This is a free drive and it's located on a public access road. You might see it on maps in the Flinders Ranges as a PAR, P-A-R. So that means public access road. It's a public road that runs through private property. Anyone can use it and it's free to use. The mines were great. It was really interesting. Once again, we were the only people there, apart from the goats. Like I said in the Akarula video, it's just hard to believe that people lived and worked out there a long time ago in these conditions. The lack of water, the lack of being able to grow food, that sort of things. I just don't know how they did it. There were the remains of a few buildings and also this big chimney as well, which was pretty incredible to see. It's outside of the national park as well, so you can fly a drone there, which I did. It looked pretty cool. Just be aware the mine shafts, though they are fenced off, they are very deep. And so just be aware if you're walking around there, just to be a little bit cautious. The other thing that we found was in all the buildings, there were a lot of animal skeletons. Now, whether it's that animals go there when they're dying or sick because they're looking for a bit of shade, somewhere cool and dark, or is it carnivores dragging animals in there to eat because again it might be a little bit cooler, not sure, but they were absolutely everywhere. Just be aware, we had a little one with us and she was going around trying to pick up everything, so just bear that in mind if you are going there with kids. Then it was back to camp to hook up the caravan and head on to Wilpena Pound. We drove back through Blinman again and we had lunch at the cafe. We managed to perfectly time it when a huge tour bus arrived, which meant it was a bit chaotic, but we still managed to get some lunch and find somewhere to sit, get a couple of ice creams, and then start heading south. Our first stop was only about 2 minutes outside of Blinman, and that was to the Wadna Art shop. This sells Aboriginal art, different things which have been woven, all sorts of different Aboriginal items that are for sale there. It was brilliant. I would highly recommend visiting. I really wanted to buy a piece of art. I didn't want anything too big because I knew that we would have to try and store it somewhere. And so I ended up buying this small piece. It was around about $75. The good thing about all the art there is it all had prices on, so you can go through and look at exactly what fits within your budget. It's always a little bit awkward when you go to places, they don't have prices on. You don't want to ask, and if it's more than you would want to pay, it then becomes a bit awkward. I didn't want to spend more than about $100, so I found this small piece, $75. It was perfect. I would highly recommend visiting Wadna. You can get yourself some authentic Aboriginal art, and you can also know that the money that you're spending there when you buy art goes directly back to that artist. On a drive down to Wilpena Pound, we saw the turn off to the Wall of China. Again, I'd seen this on YouTube and thought, oh, this looks great. It's definitely somewhere I want to go. We got halfway up the track and soon realized it was definitely not caravan friendly. Fortunately, there was quite a big spot to turn around. From where we saw it, halfway point, it looked okay. I think it looks more impressive from a drone, but to be honest, kind of just couldn't be bothered getting the drone out. One maybe to have a look at next time. We then arrived at Wilpena Pound and checked in. Now, Wilpena Pound Resort is currently owned by or run by Discovery Parks. Now, it wasn't owned or run by Discovery when we stayed there, so things might have changed a bit now. We stayed for 4 nights on a powered site and it was $60 per night. Now, they had a water hookup at the campsite for each site. However, it was good for showering and washing up, but they were doing works on their water treatment plant and they recommended that you didn't drink the water. Instead, what they did was provided bottled water at the IGA that they had there, which was fine, worked really well for us. The powered sites there were fine. There was a little bit of room between each side. There were a few trees and shrubs around providing a little bit of privacy, but not much. The amenities block was probably about a 2-3 minute walk away. And the good thing was that at night they had lights which kind of led the way through the campground so you could see where you were going. The amenities blocks as well were really nice and modern compared to other places that we'd stayed at. They were really nice. Now, we booked Wilpena Pound because we wanted to, I guess, enjoy a little bit of a resort during our trip because we would have been off-grid and camping, that sort of thing. We wanted to stay somewhere which had a few more facilities and amenities. So Wilpena Pound has a bar, a restaurant, it has a pool. When we stayed there, you could book tours and scenic flights, things like that. It also had a small shop as well, an IJ that I mentioned, and also fuel. The other good thing as well was it was close to a few sites that we wanted to visit, which was Skytrek and also the drive out to Brachina Gorge. Now, in saying that we wanted to do all those things, we never went to the bar, we didn't go to the restaurant, we went to the shop a couple of times but didn't need much. We also, on the day that we arrived in the afternoon, went to the pool. So the pool area is right next to the bar and restaurant, lovely big grassy area with some picnic tables. But when we got there, we were like, it's a bit weird. Everyone's just sat around the edge of the pool, no one's in the pool. Got all our kit off, went to get in, and it was absolutely freezing. I cannot remember the last time I felt water that cold. It was quite bizarre because we're out quite remote. There's a lot of sun and good weather in the Flinders. I don't know how they didn't have solar heating. Who knows, maybe now they do, that they're owned by Discovery Parks. And now we can understand why no one else was in the water. So we kind of just dipped our toes in, sat around for a little bit, and then we decided to head back to camp and we just relaxed by the caravan for the afternoon. On our first full day in the Flinders Ranges, we decided to go and do the Skytrek drive out at Willow Springs. It's only about 25 minutes from Wilpena Pound, and we had booked ahead online by just emailing them and I guess reserving a spot. The reason that we did that was we were going on a Saturday and we thought if people were doing weekend trips from Adelaide or different places, they'd probably be there on the weekend, and we just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss out. The cost was $70 per car. It's cheaper if you're staying at Willow Springs, and it's also cheaper if you have more than one car. We checked in and we got ourselves the self-drive booklet that they have. It has a map of where you're going and then it lists all the different stops and sites that you can see along the way. It was really busy the day we went as it was a wedding. We started out on the drive. One of the first stops, it said you can see black-footed rock wallabies. We thought, oh yeah, what's the chances of seeing them? But no, 2 of them were there. posing as if they're being trained to be there. The next stop was to see some Aboriginal rock art, and this was a little bit annoying. This is one of those things where if you want people to see a site, just clearly point it out. The directions were go a little bit this way and that way and look up. There were no arrows or anything like that. We couldn't find it. We just spent 10 minutes wandering around a rocky riverbed, essentially. It was a bit frustrating. If you want people to be able to see it, just clearly point it out. If you don't want people to see it because you're worried that it's going to be damaged or something, then just don't even mention it. One of the next stops was this old hut which is being restored. It was pretty interesting to see. I couldn't quite imagine living in something like that myself in those sorts of conditions. While we were there, another car pulled up and we had a very interesting conversation with another person who was asking us where we were staying and then asked us if we were part of the wedding that was happening at the property. We said no, and they said, yeah, it's a gay wedding. And we were like, oh, okay. And then endured a really long, awkward silence as Tom and I just didn't quite know what to say. And then eventually the guy started talking about something else. I just had to back away because I was just gonna burst out laughing. It was a little bit weird. On we went. The drive itself was quite diverse, particularly the first half of the drive, I'd say. We drove through this really big, long valley. Looks incredible on the drone. We then also drove up to the Valley of Pyramids, and this was really interesting. This is one of those very unique spots, not seen anything like this before, and this was probably one of the highlights of our drive. Driving through that big valley and then driving to this part where there's the pyramids, really interesting. Now, while we had booked ahead and they do only allow certain people out on the track at one time, compared to other places that we've been to, I would say it was busy. Now, by busy, all I mean is pretty much everywhere where we stopped, another car was driving past or other people pulled up and stopped, which was fine, no problems at all. I think if we had done our trip in reverse, and this had actually been one of the very first drives that we had done, we wouldn't have thought anything of it. But given that the drives we did around Moolooloo and Arkaroola, there was just no one else there, it was something that we just really noticed. One thing that we found with Skytrek was that the drive was pretty easy. There wasn't anything too difficult or technical. Most other people that we saw driving around were in pretty stop-forward drives. We then drove to one of the highest points on the station, or might actually be the highest points, and sat in their Flintstones car and got a few pictures. Now, the rest of the drive was, to be honest, a little bit boring. The scenery was nice enough, but it just really wasn't anything to write home about. I don't think I even have much footage of anywhere after Flintstone's car because there just wasn't that much to see. We just found that after that point, round about halfway, I think it was, we were just a little bit over it. The other thing we found was when we were pretty close to getting back to the station, the last 500 meters or so were up an incredibly steep and rocky hill. It kind of just came out of the blue, and when it was like kind of right at the end of the drive, we were looking forward to finishing, it was like, oh my gosh, here we are, just bouncing around in the car again. Do I think it was worth $70? Look, maybe not. I don't know if it necessarily lived up to the hype as well. I see a lot of videos of it on YouTube and people saying it's the best drive in the Flinders. I don't know if I would say it was. Would I do it again? Probably not. In saying that though, like I said, if this had been the very first drive that we had done on our trip, I would probably be saying that it was absolutely amazing and incredible and loved the whole thing. But having done lots of other different drives, I think it just didn't really match up. The price as well, $70 is an awful lot of money to drive around. But yeah, overall, not too bad. Like I said, the first I think half of the drive is good. There are some really beautiful scenic spots, but I think it just kind of dragged at the end. Back at camp, we did absolutely nothing. We went to the IGA and bought ice creams, which from memory would have been about $8 or $9 each. The following morning, we went and did a scenic flight over Wilpena Pound. I had bought this for Tom as a birthday present. We had organised it through the resort as well. At the time, you could organise tours and everything like that. It was a really interesting flight. It was the three of us and then an older couple and a pilot. It was incredible to see Wilpena Pound from above. It was around about a 20-30 minute flight. Just really interesting to get that high up and see the whole area from above. The pilot was giving a lot of commentary as we flew around. However, I was sat in like the naughty kid's backseat with the little one. Her attention span just wasn't going to last 20 minutes. Overall, it wasn't too bad, but towards the end, she was like, I just want to get out of here. But yeah, it was fantastic. If you had the budget, if you had the time, I'd say try and hop on a scenic flight somewhere. After our flight, we decided to do the drive out to Brachina Gorge and Razorback Lookout. From Wilpena Pound, we would have driven probably about 45 minutes all up. First, we went to Bunyaroo Lookout. This is just a bit down the road, higher up from Razorback Lookout. A very nice spot. And then we went down to Razorback Lookout and it was fantastic. It was exactly how you see it in the pictures. We were fortunate to be there on a beautiful crystal blue sky day. We were there late morning and the sunlight was just perfect to be shining on the car as it drove along. We of course did a bit of a photo shoot. It was a great spot. It really is one of the iconic spots in the Flinders that you have to visit. We then drove down to Brachina Gorge and the drive down was stunning, driving through the riverbed and all the trees. We were really surprised at the amount of water that was in Brachina Gorge, flowing water. We thought that it would be completely dry. We drove the whole way through the gorge, almost to the end where you go back on the main road to head down to Wilpena Pound. But rather than heading out to the main road, we actually decided to drive and find a spot just to park up at for the afternoon and just sit by a little bit of flowing water and throw a few rocks in. I mean, toddler life, what else are you going to do? And it was perfect. We set up the awning and just sat there in the sun. It was very lovely. We then decided to head back to camp and there were a few emus walking through camp with chicks, which was really cool. They came right past our campsite. We then that evening decided to sit down and work out what we were going to do for our last full day. Originally, I had thought about doing a drive to the Moolooloo Scenic Drive and maybe out to, I think it's called Moolooloo Station, which has a few drives as well. We just decided though that basically we couldn't be bothered doing another drive. We were pretty happy with everything that we had seen on our trip and we really liked Brachina Gorge and we thought, you know what, let's just go back and spend the day just based in one spot, sit by a bit of water and just relax. So that's what we did on our last day. The first stop though was to I think it's the Casno tree. This is a very famous tree that was in a picture a long time ago. It was nice enough as far as trees go, nothing really to write home about. We then drove down to Brachina Gorge and we found this beautiful spot next to a cliff face. It had a nice deep pool of water in front and then a small flowing stream next to it. We had some lunch there, we set up the awning, we just relaxed in the sun. It was a really, really beautiful spot. It also was pretty quiet as well. Every now and again a car would go by, but apart from that it was fine. There were also some emus that came by as well. It was really great. The next day we got up early and we left the Flinders Ranges. It was a little bit sad because it was such an amazing location. There's quite a few places we've been to and we're like, right, we've been there, will we go back? Yeah, maybe one day, but the Flinders Ranges is one that I think we would definitely go back to. There's still plenty of places that we didn't get to see and there's lots of other drives there that we just didn't have time to do. Another place that we might want to look at as well is the Bendelby Ranges, which is just south. Originally I had thought about going there for a night or two, but I just worried that it would be a bit too much and maybe it'd be a little bit same. But in saying that, I think it's somewhere that we'd go to in future. One of the great things about the Flinders Ranges as well is lots of people on YouTube go there, but it's one of those places that hasn't been ruined by YouTubers or influencers. There are lots of places on the coast, places like South Australia and Western Australia. YouTubers go there and it becomes incredibly popular and gets shut, etc. Flinders Ranges though so far has been quite immune to that. There are some free camps there that are still going. There are heaps of different places you can stay, lots of drives that you can do. Most of the time they're free. And it seems to have been pretty resistant to the kind of YouTube influencer curse, I'll say. And the other thing is that you would have seen from our footage, most of the places that we went, we were the only people there. Even places that I had found through YouTube and assumed plenty of other people would. There just wasn't anyone there. Now, once we left the Flinders Ranges, we really didn't do anything too exciting. Our goal was just to get home as quickly and safely as we could. Our first stop was the tiny little town of Jamestown. Now, one thing we love about these small towns is they always have really good playgrounds and usually have toilets and bins, those sorts of things. So we stopped off there, had a bit of lunch at the playground. We then made our way to the Barossa Valley, which we saw almost none of. It was kind of wasted on us being there. We should have just stayed somewhere a bit cheaper. We stayed at the Discovery Parks in the Barossa Valley, which is just outside the town of Tanunda. It was $65 for a powered ensuite site. And the ensuite bathroom that we had there was really nice. Of all the ensuite places that we stayed, this one was probably the best bathroom. In saying that though, our site was really small and difficult to get into. Now, when I booked it, it did say specifically your caravan needs to be under 7 meters. I said, great, we're 6 meters approx, so it'll be fine. The problem was that opposite our campsite, there were permanent villas or units. And so trying to drive forward and turn around and be able to get the caravan in straight was a bit of a mission. And then trying to find somewhere to park the car, which wasn't in the way of people in their permanent houses, was a little bit awkward. We also had someone parked behind us who was also in a very small caravan. They were only just in their site and our caravans probably would have been about this far apart. It's probably a site which is better off if you're in a rooftop tent or a motorhome or something like that. Now, one of the reasons I booked this caravan park was because it had a huge water park and I wasn't sure what the weather was going to be like when we got there. It was cold, it was a bit rainy, Splash Park just wasn't operating. The other reason why I booked this caravan park was that directly opposite, just across the road, there was a brewery that did wood-fired pizza, and the whole way down I had just been envisioning myself eating a wood-fired pizza that I hadn't eaten in 2 weeks because we'd been so far away. And we get there, open the door, walk inside, wait around for a bit, and then eventually someone comes out and says, oh, we're shut. And I was like, well, Google says you're open. It was very annoying, very disappointing. We just got some takeaway for lunch instead. Because the weather wasn't great that afternoon, we ended up driving to a pretty random spot. Now, when we were driving into the Barossa Valley, we saw, well, Tom spotted straight away a plane in someone's backyard. And then we drove by, we saw that it was a aviation museum. So this was the Greenoch Aviation Museum. We then decided, you know what, let's just go there and have a look. It was about 20 minutes from the caravan park. Now, this is just someone's private collection of plane memorabilia, and it is quite mind-blowing to see that this is just one person's collection. He had tiny little model planes of every single size and type. He had huge, actual disused big planes and absolutely everything in between. It was quite unbelievable. Now, we did meet the owner there, and I think it was just a donation from memory. We might have paid about $20, which was fine. There's a big area inside one of the sheds you can walk around, some planes outside, and then a few old farm trucks, farm machinery as well in another shed. Very interesting. If you're passing through the area and you need something to do, maybe if the weather's a bit bad, that's one to visit. That night, again, we just got some takeaway for dinner and then we pretty much just went to bed. There wasn't really a nice area to kind of sit outside. The weather was also pretty rainy, pretty cold, so we were like, let's just go to sleep. The next morning we went to the Barossa Valley Chocolate Factory. This was amazing, so delicious. I was definitely lying on all the diabetic finger prick tests I had to do the next day with all my readings. Sorry, doctor. Lunch was great. Most things were chocolate based. The little one had a great time. They were really child friendly there. They brought over, colouring and drawing for her to do. It did get busy though, so if you are going, just make sure that you book. Then it was on to Tail and Bend. This is becoming a fairly regular stop for us if we're driving through the area. It has everything you kind of need for a stop: bakery and shops, big playground, toilets. It has a water fill up, and I'm pretty sure it has a dump point. We had some lunch from the bakery there and then headed on our way. That night we stayed at the Keith Caravan Park and it was $55 for a powered ensuite site. Now, there really wasn't that much there for us to do. We got in fairly late, the weather wasn't that good. It was, however, walking distance to the local pub. So we walked there, had some dinner and came back. The ensuite site there, look, it was okay. $55 was probably a bit expensive in my opinion. The bathroom was just a very, very basic brick building. Needless to say, it did the job, but in hindsight, we maybe could have just kept driving on and missed out on staying there. The next day we stopped at Nil and got some lunch at one of the bakeries. It was really disappointing. Usually country bakeries are great. This one just missed the mark. We then drove to Halls Gap Lakeside Tourist Park. This was probably about 5-10 minutes outside of the town or village of Halls Gap. We absolutely loved this place. We were kind of thinking, oh, we just want to get home. The last couple of places we stayed hadn't been that great, but this place was brilliant. It had a huge campers lounge with sofas and a fireplace inside, games, tables, big kitchen and laundry area, all inside, all undercover. It was brilliant because the weather was really cold. The other thing that they had there, which was amazing, was wood-fired heated swimming pools. While we were there, only one of them was open, but it was amazing. The outside temperature was probably about 12. The pool temperature was about 26. We stayed at a powered grassy site and it was $45 for the night, which was really good value, we thought. They also had a big area near the lake which had kangaroos and emus, lots of space to get around between campsites as well. Overall, we thought it was brilliant. We didn't end up actually seeing any of the Grampians. We kind of just wanted to get home. It's somewhere that we'll go back to, and I think we'd definitely stay there again. The next day we got up and we headed home, and that was the end of our trip. All up, we drove about 3,500 kilometers, and this includes all the day trips that we did and different four-wheel drive tracks. We spent approximately $714 on accommodation, which sounds pretty good when you stretch out over 2.5 weeks, but when you add on the cost of the caravan, which is about $2,500, it doesn't work out to be that cost effective, but still cheaper than if we had stayed in cabins or Airbnbs. Fuel, I reckon we must have spent about $1,500. It could well be more. As I said before, our car is not fuel efficient. It doesn't get good fuel economy. Now, groceries, we probably spent about $1,000, I want to say. So all up, the trip would have been about $5,500 for 2.5 weeks. Would have been far cheaper if we owned our own caravan. We also did a scenic flight, which is an extra $400, and we got our banana fine as well, which was another $400. We also could have saved a bit of money if we had stayed on unpowered sites or if we'd been self-contained, but unfortunately that wasn't an option for us. One thing I wanted to also quickly mention here at the end is that we took a Zoleo with us. So a Zoleo is an emergency beacon and it also has a messaging function. We had looked at hiring a satellite phone for the trip because we knew that we were going to be fairly remote, not too bad. But if, for example, we got stuck on the road out to Arkaroola, we would have been hours from help, had a young child, an insulin-dependent pregnant lady. We just didn't want to be stuck and not be able to contact people. As I said before in the previous video, we're with Vodafone and we just couldn't get any reception out there. A satellite phone though was going to cost well over $1,000 to hire, and I just couldn't see that it was going to be worth that cost. The Zoleo was, I think, about $250 to buy. There was a one-time activation fee and then you go on a monthly subscription. We're on the absolute basic cheapest one, which is about $30 a month. You can upgrade your subscription if you want more features or if you want to be able to send more text messages. I think ours might include about 10 text messages a month. In saying that, we've never used the messaging function. So it has the emergency beacon built in, but then you can hook it up to the Zoleo app, and with that you can check the weather and you can also send messages to people. You can send them your GPS coordinates, a really handy feature. Another good thing that we liked about it is you can suspend your monthly subscription. And so once we had finished the trip, we knew we weren't going to be traveling anywhere for about 6 months. And so I suspended it for that whole time. Once we started traveling again, I reactivated it. So that's something that you should consider getting if you are traveling remotely. That is a wrap on our amazing Arkaroola and Flinders Ranges trip. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.